Thank you, thank you. Okay. The abortion conversation. Mine is not a war on choice. It is a revulsion against the killing of innocents. Terrorists have killed 3,000 since 1990, but abortionists killed 3,500 in America yesterday. How did it come to this? That in our civilized society, abortionists murder children, and that mothers authorize the murder of their own children. That 75% of women having abortions self-identify as Christians. That Christians could be silent about what is happening. What we are talking about is the elimination of millions of unborn children. Some say abortion mills are the death camps of America. We all know about the ovens under the Nazi regime, but here we have ovens too, that burn what is left once all the desired infant body parts have been sold. The sanitation workers who pick up the leftover parts from Planned Parenthood have testified to these ovens. Most Germans neither aided nor opposed the actions of the Nazis, and thereby permitting the Holocaust to occur. And they said, never again. But here, we have something under a different guise. Nothing like before with jackboots and salutes, but with benign things like health care and choice and women's rights. It's happening under our noses, but it is genocide on a scale that exceeds the Holocaust. If we somehow survive as a nation, future generations will wonder at our stupidity and self-centeredness. For the sake of our own convenience, we kill our young. And in so doing, we will destroy ourselves. Abortion of babies is not just wrong. It is evil. It is diabolically, ruthlessly evil. A nation cannot destroy its own young and still expect to survive. While it takes a while to bleed out, we have cut our own throats. But we say we want freedom. Note the deception here. This is not freedom. This is to be ensnared in one of the most sinister acts of betrayal ever perpetrated by one human being against another. It is to play God. It is to say that your life counts more than another's, and therefore you have the right to kill. My definition of abortion is stronger people using violent force against weaker people and killing them. It's a worldview that holds you hostage to depravity, and perhaps with that mindset, you lose a bit of your soul as well. Some who call themselves Christians have picked up on the phrase and the thinking, well, who am I to say what a woman can do with her body? The thing is that it's killing, and any support of evil seems to warp us. So much so that any restrictions on baby murder seem to be greeted with near hysteria. We have the power to bless people enormously with the truth surrounding abortion. Our viewpoints are at least partially governed by what we know, and we don't know enough. Once you look into the eyes of this beast and stare it down, you will be changed. Can we have the pastor slogan, please? As one pastor says, he had been very wary and tepid about speaking and acting on abortion. He is now on the front lines. What changed him? And what will, I hope and pray, motivate all of us to stand and be counted? He didn't know enough. And this, by the way, is missions, because we are to tell our neighbors the truth. One advocate said that the most shocking thing he experienced was the lack of response from evangelicals who pretend to be pro-life but will not explore the issue or speak about it. Listen, please, to what former abortionist Dr. Levitino says as he testifies before Congress.
Second trimester D&E abortions performed between roughly 14 and 24 weeks of gestation. Your patient today is 17 years old. She's 22 weeks pregnant. Her baby is the length of your hand plus a couple of inches. And she's been feeling her baby kick for the last several weeks, but she's asleep on an operating room table. You walk into that operating room scrubbed and gowned, and after removing laminaria, you introduce a suction catheter into the uterus. This is a 14 French suction catheter. If she were 12 weeks pregnant or less, basically the width of your hand or smaller, you could basically do the entire procedure with this. But babies this big don't fit through catheters this size. After suctioning the amniotic fluid out from around the baby, you introduce an instrument called a Sofer clamp. It's about 13 inches long. It's made of stainless steel. The business end of this clamp is about 2.5 inches long and 1/2 inch wide. There are rows of sharp teeth. This is a grasping instrument, and when it gets a hold of something, it does not let go. A D&E procedure is a blind abortion, so picture yourself introducing this and grabbing anything you can blindly and pull, and I do mean hard, and out pops a leg about that big, which you put down on the table next to you. Reach in again, and pull out an arm about the same length, which you put down on the table next to you. And use this instrument again and again to tear out the spine, the intestines, the heart and lungs. Head on the baby that size is about the size of a large plum. Can't see it, but you've pretty good idea you've got it if you've got your instrument around something and your fingers are spread about as far as they go. You know you did it right if you crush down on the instrument and white material runs out of the cervix. That was the baby's brains. Then you could pull out skull pieces. And you have a day like I had a lot of times. Sometimes a little face comes back and stares back at you. Congratulations. You just successfully performed a second trimester D&E abortion. You just affirmed her right to choose. I did over 1,200 abortions over a 4-year period in private practice, not counting the ones that I did during my training. I met my wife during my first year of training at Albany Medical Center. We got married about a year later and found that we had an infertility problem. After years of failed infertility treatment and several years trying to adopt a child, we were blessed with adopting a little girl. 2 months short of my daughter's 6th birthday, she was killed in an auto accident and literally died in her arms in the back of an ambulance. Anyone who has children might think they have some idea of what that feels like, but unless you've been through it yourself, you have no idea whatsoever. I know people find it hard to believe, but what do you do after disaster? You bury your child and then you go back to your life. And I don't remember exactly how long it was after my daughter died that I showed up at Albany Medical Center OR number 9 to perform my first second trimester D&E abortion. I wasn't thinking of it as anything special. This was routine to me. But I reached in, literally pulled out an arm or leg and got sick. You know, earlier on I described stacking up body parts on the side of the table. It's not to, gross people out, to use a simple term. When you do an abortion, you need to keep inventory. You have to make sure you get 2 arms and 2 legs and all the pieces. If you don't, your patient's going to come back infected, bleeding, or dead. So I soldiered on and finished that abortion. And I know it sounds, as I said, hard for people to believe, but I'm telling you straight up my experience. You know, after over 1,200 abortions, first and second trimester up to 24 weeks and all the rest of it, and being very dedicated to it, for the first time in my life I really looked. I really looked at that pile of body parts on the side of the table. And I didn't see her wonderful right to choose, and I didn't see all the money I just made. All I could see was somebody's son or daughter. And I stopped doing late-term abortions after that, and several months later stopped doing all abortions.
And then I saw in a biblical encyclopedia that one displays his own character or values by that which repulses him, that which is abominable to you. Psalm 88:9 says that the practice of burning children is an abomination to Yahweh. I think we can extract from that God also finds the practice of cutting up children abominable. We must not become desensitized to what is happening. The unthinkable gradually becomes more and more acceptable, hailed as the lesser of two evils, then it's justified, and finally it's called a moral right, and it's normalized. But ultimately, we lose our moral sense of revulsion. Here are a couple points of truth that you could bless other people with, and I assure you that most people are unaware of this. Sometimes what everybody thinks they know is wrong. At issue is this statement: we must have an exception clause for the life of the mother. This is a myth, and it bedevils the conversation. The truth on this point is shocking, but it's also good news and very liberating, a wonderful example of the truth making you free. But is it true that we might have to choose one life over the other? We've been forced into thinking that we must have an exception clause. This colors and distorts much of our thinking. We have both church and state embraced abortion as a necessary evil, which is to say that we have been deceived. So what about the life of the mother? A fair question. Dr. C. Everett Koop, who was Surgeon General of the U.S., says that for the 36 years he was a surgeon, he never once was aware of a single situation in which a preborn child's life had to be taken in order to save the life of the mother. He believes this very popular pro-choice argument is nothing more than a smokescreen. And Dr. Levitino says none of the thousands of abortions I performed, which were categorized as saving the life of the mother, were actually necessary. He explains that cutting the child to pieces would only incur more risk for the mother. It wasn't a necessary step, he says. It never is. And as the over 1,000 obstetricians, neonatologists, pediatricians, and midwives who signed the Dublin Declaration have testified, there is never any medical justification for abortion. Now, it may be necessary in some rare circumstances to deliver a baby early in order to save the mother. But the additional step of killing the child is not necessary. And to sum up, Walsh of the Blaze says, abortion is never necessary to save a woman's life. It has never saved a life. It is designed instead to preserve the lifestyle of the mother. A baby's life and her mother's life are never in competition. We are never required to choose between the two. And point two, unless you understand that we were lied to about Roe v. Wade, you might tend to think that it's a necessary or acceptable law. But Dr. Nathanson, who performed over 75,000 abortions and who ran the largest abortion clinic in the United States, after repentance and conversion, has told the truth of how he and others made up and told and sold the lies to the American public. Lying is essential for the approval of abortion. Nathanson says that the edifice of abortion is built on a foundation of lies. He says we simply fabricated fictional polls. We pulled these figures out of the air. We fabricated the number of illegal abortions done. These false figures are still believed. He says that by telling these lies, he is responsible for the almost universally believed lies about backstreet abortions. When we began to believe that it was a personal decision between a woman and her doctor instead of the killing that it is, we gave in to perverted thinking. We were conned, fed myths. The war against the unborn was lost. We were deceived by semantic gymnastics that allowed us to believe the unthinkable. What happened to us is that for the most part, the majority, including the church, has been silent about this blasphemy. What is the difference between this and sacrificing children to Moloch? Let's look at the actual wording of Roe v. Wade, and let's do the logic. First of all, they said that they need not resolve the difficult question of when life begins. The judiciary at this point in the development of man's knowledge is not in a position to speculate as to the answer. And they then went on. Next, please. This is an incredible affirmation of the non-logic. If this suggestion of personhood is established, the appellant's case, of course, collapses, for the fetus's right to life is then guaranteed specifically by the 14th Amendment. So they knew back then, and let's remind ourselves of what that 14th Amendment says. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So, in doing the logic, guess what? There is nothing in the Constitution that states that toddlers are persons, or teenagers for that matter. So can we do away with them? And by the way, isn't it interesting how muddled thinking on who is a person and who is not are huge factors, not only in this subject, but in theology. In the case of unborn children, personhood is denied, and in the case of God, it's multiplied. There is no abortion, no argument for abortion that makes sense. This is why I can stand before you 100% pro-life, without apology, without compromise, and without exception. The right to choose is not a valid argument because it fails to take in the content of that choice. It is a brilliantly evil choice of words. The issue is choice comes with a price, and one lives and one dies. Do we really have the right to end another human being's life? To authorize the killing of an unborn human being? Our choices end where another human being's fundamental rights begin. A choice for one means no choice and no life for the other. And did you ever think that the mother, after an abortion, is then the mother of a dead baby? We are called to witness against the murder of innocents. Silent consent to the legalization of murder is not acceptable. If you say, well, I am personally against abortion, but if my neighbor is pro-choice, that's his right, that is just like saying, well, I don't personally agree with child abuse, but if my neighbor wants to abuse his child, that's his right. Abortion is not compatible with being a Christian. Given that, what do we do? Perhaps at least part of the answer would be the same as with our faith. We speak about it. And we also ask questions. The best question possibly to ask, thanks to Ray Comfort, is this. It's fill in the blank. It's okay to kill a baby in the womb when? We should never be hesitant to say boldly and clearly that abortion is a uniquely devastating behavior, and our goal is to make abortion unthinkable. That is perhaps even more important than making it illegal. Our attempt is to persuade people that the taking of innocent human lives is wrong. I do not think that as Christians we have the right to remain silent. If abortion is diabolically, ruthlessly evil, don't we have to oppose it with all the energy and passion we can summon? No law can give you the right to do what is wrong. There is always a better way than abortion. And Luke 2:21 speaks of Jesus being given his name before he was even conceived. And likewise in 1:13, John was so named before he was born. It's all so simple, really. Unborn children are persons just like you and me, and that is why it's wrong to kill them. Thank you.